Here's why men have to change first in the marriage. Yes, it's a sledgehammer title, but it's not just clickbait. It's the mindset that will change your marriage and your life for the better. I'm Alessandro, the men's coach, and I'm on a mission to eradicate boy-like behavior in our society. And if that's triggering you, maybe it's time to shut the fuck up and listen. Let's get into it. Okay, so why this episode today? Why do I see this as like such a big thing? Well, the number one thing that I see within comments that come to me on Instagram, on Facebook, is this whole idea that like, why do I have to change first? So a man will always say to me, like, why do I have to change first? She's got other shit going on. Why is it me that has to change? Well, the things that, like, there's a few different ways to like tackle this, but you know, the first and most obvious is that I'm a men's coach, okay? I'm teaching from my experience, and I'm not teaching from, you know, the feminine experience. And if I was teaching from the feminine experience, maybe if I identified as both, then maybe I could, but I don't, that would be a whole different experience. And I'm not going to speak to the feminine. And I want to make it very clear, yes, there are things that women can work on, and yes, there are things that men can work on. You know, and in a marriage, of course, we're talking about team thinking, but there's a deeper thing that goes into this, and it's actually brilliant that it's proven by science, and it's brilliant that you can actually see how it works. There is a reason why men actually do need to change first in a marriage, and to explain it, I will give you first a story and an analogy, and then we're going to go into research, okay? So the first thing that I want to say, and the first story and analogy that I like to think of like this is, I believe that when you, or like the husband wants the wife to change and the wife wants the husband to change, it's kind of like a Mexican standoff. Okay, so imagine, you know, like, or even one of those old spaghetti western movies, you know, the cowboy movies, and they're standing there, the married couple, and they're holding their guns up, and they're like, "You gotta change." She's like, "No, you gotta change." And then both of them don't change, and they just stand there, and the movie goes on forever, and you just see those cut pan angles of their eyes, and they're both just getting angrier and angrier until one of them just leaves, all right, because nobody changes. And this is a situation that I want to try and avoid. Now, how do we avoid them? Okay, so let's talk about research. John Gottman and the Gottman Institute, they speak about the 4 horsemen of marriage apocalypse, so to speak, the 4 worst traits that are going to lead to divorce. These 4 worst traits are defensiveness, criticism, contempt, and stonewalling. Defensiveness, criticism, contempt, and stonewalling. Now, if you come onto my page, there is no doubt in my mind, right? There's no doubt in my mind that the ones that you identify with specifically more as a man are the defensiveness and the stonewalling, right? So it's as soon as something comes to you, like, you know, she's trying to say, go do this, you're getting defensive, or as soon as, you know, that happens, you stonewall, you put your emotional barriers up, and you don't necessarily know why, but you're doing it, all right? If she says something and you think it's stupid, go buy me flowers, you might be like, this is stupid. Like, I don't value the whole idea that you said that I need to buy you flowers for connection. And so you shut it off, you feel like you're being attacked, and so you stonewall, okay? So, or you get defensive and you say, but I did it last time, but I did it then, but I did it this, but blah, 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 blah. Okay, so that's the man side, and I see that man side often, like really fucking often. So let's imagine that's your gun in the spaghetti western. You know, you're standing up there and going, I'm not going to drop this defensiveness and this stonewalling until you drop that contempt and criticism. So that's what she often has, is that contempt and criticism. So criticisms first is like, you know, no matter what you do, it's feeling like everything's wrong. Like, I even had a coaching client who said to me, yeah, but like my wife even comes to me and like says that when I'm peeling an apple, like she tells me I'm doing wrong because I'm not doing it her way, and I'm using a peeler. She likes to use a knife. Like, you know, I just look at that as criticism. And yeah, it probably is, because I think it's moved into contempt because there's been her nervous system. Well, we're going to get into this a little later on, but her nervous system is so shot up that she's just like, she's going to criticize. She's criticizing. She's seen behaviors from you that she doesn't like over and over again. She's probably asked you many, many times what she wants. You haven't prioritized it. And therefore, then she starts bringing in criticism, and then that turns into contempt. And contempt can get really dark. And then I hear and I see a lot of like boy channels of people who think that they're men going like, a woman's just going to leave you because she's feeling contempt. And I'm just like, yeah, but how many years of telling you what she wanted first was there, where you didn't want to drop your gun down. Okay, so let's put that aside to now, but essentially let's imagine those are the two guns. So you got defensiveness and stonewalling, she's got contempt and criticism, and you're both saying, I'm not going to bring that gun down. Now, I hear you. There's this whole thing of like, we have to do this together. But there are a few factors at play that make me honestly believe, like in time, both guns will come down. They have to come down. Otherwise the marriage, you can have a little bit of the guns every now and then, but the marriage essentially will end if we keep those guns up for too long. So how do we bring them down? Who should bring down first? Why do I believe it's the man that's got to bring down it first? Let's go and take a little roundabout way around this. So first and foremost, let's talk about societal pressures. So I believe that our society has changed quite a lot over the years, and even I genuinely believe like the biggest issues that we've had is a society change from around about 100 to 150 years ago, and this change of industrial revolution, and people weren't even at the home anymore. And as soon as man had to leave home, then roles got put all on woman, and I'm speaking caveman language just to for effect, okay? Don't slaughter me in comments. But essentially, when man had to leave home and woman had to stay at home, some huge issues started here. First and foremost, it became like this idea that, and I think we've moved past this in general, but first and foremost, there was this idea that the man was more important because he was out of home. And I think that's a societal stupidity and very old way of thinking that came about through marketing in the 1950s, 1940s, and it changed all the way that we all thought. And a lot of men had some huge superior importance that they placed on it. Plus, we just also came out of like a whole suppression of women for hundreds of years before that. So that man out of the house was a kind of weird thing. And then women had to sort of take up a lot of what we would call now the mental load or mental labor in the house. Okay, don't worry, I'm going to get back to where we are today in just a moment. Then we probably moved into the space where then we had feminism and women's rights, and then women came into the workforce, and it's like, okay, let's make it 50-50, let's get women out there. But then, interestingly enough, women had to do work outside of the house, but then they also had to still keep everything and do everything in the house. And then men just had to work outside the house. And so let me give you an analogy here, because I really like this analogy, and I think this is something that if I were to ever write a book one day, I'd probably write like to do with this analogy. Let's imagine that you and your wife, you're actually, it's the moment you get together, you're forming something that I like to call like a life ship, like your relationship. It's a ship, okay? And that ship is you and her and kids under 18, and you're going in a certain direction in life, and that's your life. Imagine your life is that ship. Okay? And everything to do with that ship is your life. So let's imagine your working, so to speak, is like you being down in the hold rowing. And you're rowing all day, and you're rowing all day. And what I see now, what we've moved into, this new phase, the second phase after the whole jerk 1950s phase where men were first taken out of the home. Let's take a quick break. If you're listening to this podcast because things have been rough at home, the fights, the tone, the distance between you and your wife, well, then maybe you need to know something. The Better Husband Academy is officially open. It's a 70-day program where I teach you exactly how to stop the same arguments, drop defensiveness, repair resentment, and actually show up as a man that you and your wife respect again. These are real tools, the stuff that actually works with you and your wife in real time, in real life, not just years of talking in therapy in circles. The Academy doors are open for 1 month, and this is the only way to work with me for a long time. And once the doors close, they close, and I go all in with the men inside. So if you want to change things at home, join the Better Husband Academy now. We get this idea that men are like down there rowing, and when they get up to the top of the deck, right? They're rowing because rowing's important. We need to move the boat. And that's what money does. It brings in money and you move the boat. And there's also a little bit of purpose that's in line in there. But, rowing for not even knowing where you're going can't really be called purpose. And then you come up to the top of the deck and you go, I'm tired. And that's the man in the situation. You go, I'm tired. And so then you just lie on the top of the deck. You just lie there. You lie there like a big fat fly, okay? You go, I'm tired. Now you look at her. She's been rowing maybe just as long as you. She's also got a kid on one arm, the railings have fallen off, she's got another kid running and about to fall off the railings. She's also holding the frickin' steering wheel of this boat going, where are we going? Because you're too tired to ever talk about it, and every time you talk about it, you get defensive and you stonewall. And she's also asked you to fix the railing because the railing has essentially broken and a kid could fall off that thing, and it's actually quite fucking dangerous for this kid. And the boat is now moving so fast because either both of you have rowed it or just you've been rowing it, and that boat is about to head into a storm, and there's probably some fucking cannibals with archers in an island after that, and she can probably imagine and see ahead that there's going to be bows and arrows hitting into our sides, and all you're doing is sitting on the top of the deck going, I'm just fucking tired from rowing. So the thing here is that if we think about that analogy, the boat itself, when a woman says, I want you to lead, I want you to initiate, I want you to do anything like that, she's talking about like the shared responsibilities of that boat. That boat is 50% yours and 50% hers. It's not just yours. And when you're on this boat, you're in charge 50% as a man, you're in charge of 50% of where that boat's going. And if you just lie on top of the deck and you just don't care, right? That's when her criticism and her stonewalling comes up, and you have to do it together. That's also why she's critical. That's where her criticism is coming from. So that's where, I believe into, if we're going to talk about this, like the two guns situation here, her criticism is coming from the fact that she doesn't feel like you're actually at least by the steering wheel with her and divvying up these tasks in a way that actually makes sense for both of you. Not just makes sense for you, not just makes sense for her. And I get that life is hard, but life is also hard together, and you can't, understanding each other and realizing that you're a team is a huge part of this. You've got to understand each other and realize that you're a team. So that's the societal pressures. And that's where I believe that this comes in. Now, there's another factor that makes it really hard for women to change first. Specifically, I believe it's hormonal as well. So over time, it's actually really difficult for women's bodies to handle cortisol a lot more than men's bodies because of cycles. A lot of men have no idea about women's cycles. A lot of women have no idea about women's cycles. And this is something I'm really grateful for, having learned through my wife, especially as my wife has PCOS. And it's one of these things where, her cycle is a little bit different, and it comes to certain points in the cycle, and what people say is normal doesn't happen with her, and you have to learn, you have to understand what's going on. And when there are certain moments within the cycle, then she's even extra angry or annoyed or something like that, and then you have to really wonder what's going on. And men sort of take that criticism that comes through those kind of times as the end. They get really, really scared about it, and then they become more defensive and more stonewally. And then that more defensive and more stonewally feeds more into the criticism and to the contempt. And so this hormonal path is actually really interesting as well, because I believe that the societal and the hormonal then create the feminine to be slightly more vulnerable. And I think within our society, women are more vulnerable. We see it in danger. We see it in men attacking women. We just see it in physical size. Women in general are more vulnerable. And so either they have to project to change that, to get more masculine, to try and fix this sort of situation, or they hold up that gun longer than they need to because, well, not longer than they need to, but they hold up that gun and they're not going to bring it down because that's the thing that's protecting them. They don't feel safe. And when you hear a woman in a relationship say, I don't feel emotionally or financially safe, it's because she is vulnerable and her body is geared to find vulnerabilities. I actually think it's a fucking superpower of women. And this is where, we start talking about the influence of women. And if men can actually understand that that a woman's intuition is freaking brilliant for them, because she will find their blind spot. She will find it more than you can. And when you can hear that and listen to that, it actually changes a lot how you behave, because you start realizing that she's not actually attacking. She's actually saying things that could really help your life ship together. But we'll get to that in due time. So I believe that that's why she can't bring the gun down. She won't bring the gun down. And the reason I'm saying this, if we're going to go back to why you should change first as a man, is because it is quicker for you. So we're going to talk about speed, even as a man. This is really fucking practical for you here. It is quicker for you as a man to change your behaviors of defensiveness and stonewalling and become more open and then accept influence. It's quicker for you to go that route than to change all of society and to change hormones. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. And it is also often just the biggest thing that you are missing within the relationship is that you don't see all the things that are going on in your shared lifeship. You don't see the railing being cracked open. You don't see the storm ahead. You don't care for that because you feel like you're doing everything that you were told that you needed to do. But ironically, she's doing exactly that too. Often in modern society, she's working like that as just as much. And even if she's not, she's doing everything else around the house. And even if you've tried working from home while you've got dependents, in that home, you cannot work as much. You can't do as much as you think you can. And there's a reason why you get out of the house as men, So we cannot look at I've just been out working all day as more than, anyway. So this is the thing, is to understand the shared responsibilities in the home and get to understanding that. But she's not going to drop her gun, so to speak. She's not going to drop that contempt and criticism unless you drop yours first, because she feels more vulnerable. And so she feels that it's safer for her to wait to see if you're going to bring your gun down. Okay. And so it's it's quicker path. So you're not going to change society. You're not going to change her hormones first. You're not going to get her to, she could, I do see women actually being able to work on themselves and doing that. But I think the reason I also go for men and why I think men should change first is, one, I think it's more efficient. It's more efficient. And two, it's because you're actually missing things and you are most likely the fucking problem. We keep thinking that we're not. I think we have this huge blind spot because of society as well, where we think we're not the problem. We think we're working, we think we're providing, we think we're doing this, but we're not actually doing everything that's needed for the shared boat, the shared life ship together. So it's more quicker, it's more efficient, you probably are the change. And then the final reason why I think you should change first in this sort of thing is because your change actually affects her change. Your change actually affects her change. So essentially, by dropping your gun of defensiveness and stonewalling, you become more open. She starts feeling more safe to drop her gun of criticism and contempt. Plus, she stops feeling criticism and contempt because you're actually fucking helping. Not helping, you're actually jumping into, and that's actually the word here, and it's so ingrained in our language. We talk about helping somebody else's mental load rather than actually saying, wait, this is the things that I needed to be doing all along, right? Because again, we go back to that analogy of the shared life ship. Those roles and responsibilities of, fixing the railing and then making sure that the ship doesn't head into a storm, and rowing is part of it. Working in your life and earning money is part of the life, but it's not the only thing. And then when we say the word helping, when we say, I'm going to help her with the other stuff, you make it sound like, oh, well, that's actually was always hers to do. And again, that comes back to that societal conditioning that we always, come back to. It's not a her role thing. It's all of this needs to be, divvied up between the two of you in a way that both of you can be happy. Both of you can at least be satisfied with the amount of roles. And yes, it might be difficult, and one person might be doing 80 and one person might be doing 20%. And if everyone's happy, great. But if one person's not happy, then it's not good. It's not good. Then you have to renegotiate and have conversations about this and really get to the table and talk about that. So I'm digressing here. By you actually stepping into that role and doing the things that you need to do within the house, and you both actually both taking on the load of what is required of you within this life together, the shared life, then she softens as well. Now, even from the Gottman Institute, and this is one of the stats that I really love, there's a core finding from Gottman's research on marriage that most men never hear. He actually studied newlywed couples over time and tracked what actually led to stability versus divorce. And one of the strongest predictors was that whether the husband was willing to accept the influence from his wife. Now, that doesn't mean doing whatever she wants. It actually means taking her feedback on board, letting her perspective shape decisions, and not shutting down or getting defensive when she brings something up. So in follow-up summaries of that research, when a man refused to share power or accept influence, so I really look at this as sharing that power of that life ship, so to speak, or accept the influence of when his wife says, I have an intuition of we should do this or we should do that. When a man does not do that, the marriage has been shown to have something like an 80% chance of falling apart over time. Now, to be clear, that percentage isn't the only cause of divorce, and the specific research was based on newlywed samples. But that pattern is simple. When a man rejects the influence, the relationship breaks down. When he stays open, listens, and actually responds, the relationship flourishes. Statistically, if you're listening to the show, you're already asking the right question. How do I show up better? Maybe things feel harder than they should at home. Maybe you know something needs to shift, but you're just not sure where to start. Here's what I know. You're not lazy, you're not broken, you just never got the manual. Nobody teaches men how to be husbands. Nobody shows you how to navigate the hard conversations, regulate your emotions, or turn your marriage into an actual team. That's why I created Better Husband in 2-Minute Emails. It's one email every Saturday morning with one tool you can use that week. There's no therapy speak, no blame, just the skills that actually move the needle. 2 minutes, one Saturday morning, that's your entry point. Because 3 months of focused work beats 20 years repeating the same damn pattern. Links in the show notes. First email lands this Saturday. Statistically. So we've just gone story-wise why you should jump in. Now statistically-wise, if you're not accepting power within the relationship, and that means initiating and leading, that's what everyone talks about, masculine energy, accepting the fucking power and the responsibility that you need to have within your own shared lifeship. If you're not accepting that, right? Or you're not accepting her influence. Now, her influence is literally when she says, hey, she has that spider sense. Remember I spoke about that superpower when she goes, ooh, I think there is a storm coming. And you just go, you're just being silly and hormonal and you don't accept that influence. Again, something like an 80% chance of divorce. That is huge. That is huge. Now, the final thing I want to say about this and why men should change first is a personal ownership part of this. It's personal ownership. So the thing is, I am a huge believer in personal responsibility and ownership. If we take responsibility for our shit, as men specifically, if we take responsibility for our own shit, and let's imagine it as shit piles, all right? I'm sorry, I'm Australian, I like to swear. If you're American, you genuinely are going to be the one that goes, I don't like your swearing. And it's like, I'm sorry, it's just who the fuck I am. So imagine that you have 2 huge piles of shit and one belongs to you, one belongs to her. I'm not saying that she doesn't have her traumas and her triggers. I know she has just as many as you, sometimes more, sometimes less, doesn't fucking matter, right? But if you focus on shoveling away your shit, and I mean your traumas, your defensiveness, your stonewalling, all like that, if you just work on shoveling that away and clearing that, and that means, being open, being more present, actually working on yourself every single day, being aware of what annoys you and triggers you. When your wife says something out loud and then you get defensive and cut off, understanding, oh, I got some shit that I got to look on. When your wife says, are you doing okay? And you're like, I'm fine. And you're genuinely not fine and you're lying. And then you're asking yourself, what does this actually mean? Am I actually fine? No, I'm actually not fine, but I don't know why. So I'm just going to tell her the truth. I don't know why I'm not happy right now. I don't know why, but that's the truth. Jesus, all of that is shoveling your own shit away, okay? And the moment you do that, the moment you clear that away, what's left is her shit. Personal responsibility. Then you can actually not take it fucking personally. And you can also look at it and go, and this is where I talk about, a lot of men then say, well, what if I know that my wife is like truly psychotic, narcissistic, or what if my wife is actually just abusive? Well, then fucking clear your shit quick. So you can look at what's left and go, is this actually abuse or narcissism, or did my shit clear it? Fuck, it did. Maybe I was the bad one. And the thing is, if you're not and you've actually owned your shit, that personal responsibility is liberating. It's a superpower. You don't take things personally after that. And you also can then deal with the other pedal in life. And if you realize that her shit is just her traumas and you still love her and trust her to accept her shit in her time. Right? And that is part of owning your shit too. And if it is truly trauma, if it is truly, I don't forget the word here, but if it is truly, abusive or whatever, then you can make that decision once you've owned your shit. Own your shit. Own your shit. It's so powerful. It's so powerful. So that's why I believe that men need to change first in relationships. Women are in the society that we have, women are vulnerable and they're not going to drop that criticism and contempt. Plus they're overloaded and overworked because of societal expectations. Plus we don't understand what the issues that they're going through with their body. For fuck's sake, for some women, we have no idea what it's like to feel like a different person 4 to 5 to 6 to 7 times in a month. We have no idea what that's like, and then we judge them for it. That's the thing. It's start understanding your partner, start understanding this world, and that's part of owning your shit. And when you start doing that, when you start having that awareness, that's what changing looks like. And when you do that, you live an amazing, amazing life. All right, so that's this episode of Shut the Fuck Up and Listen. I go so much deeper into how and why coming up very soon in my Better Husband Academy, which is launching in January. Doors will open in the next couple of weeks, so do stay tuned in my world, either on my emails or that. And I've also got a link to join my Better Husband emails below, which is how to save the marriage without years of therapy in just 2-minute emails every week. All right, thanks so much for listening to Shut the Fuck Up and Listen. I will see you next week.